Hello, I'm Mike Ryan, and welcome to Bnap Today, Friday, September 4, 2020. Today on Bnap Today, we're going to talk wine, talk gin, and enjoy some regional cuisine in Tokyo. But first, the headlines. China has accused Australia of dumping wine. Investigation by China's Ministry of Commerce could take more than a year, but there are fears that thousands of Australian jobs might be lost. Mike Hayes is president of the Queensland Wine Industry Association and is also director of viticulture and chief winemaker of Sirame Wines. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Very well, thank you. It's interesting times for the wine industry. China, a major market for Queensland and Australian wines. Can you tell us the value of the Queensland exports to China?
Look, at present, Mike, there's only probably two major players at the present time. Sirame Wines at Mount Cotton in Greater Brisbane, and the other winery would be Clovelly Estate Wines, which is up in the Murgon district in the South Burnett. There would be filterings and little bits and pieces coming out from some of the smaller wineries, but these particular players are probably the only ones who would have the sufficient supplies. Maybe one or two of the Gold Coast wineries might be filtering a bit of wine into there, but at present, out of all of the Queensland producers combined, I would say maybe 20-25% of the wine.
Despite some concerns with China several months ago, were there any restrictions imposed then?
No, we didn't see any restrictions. We actually were still filtering some small parcels of wine into China. But as you would be aware, the current situation globally with COVID has restricted a lot of movements, not only with wine, but beef. And realistically, it's put the world into a bit of a scare. Nobody really knew what was happening, what the future was going to be. And I guess you would probably say that's still the case at present.
The anti-dumping case, do you think this is more of a trade war than of just being real? It's, as Donald Trump would say, is this fake news?
Well, look, I don't think it's fake news, and I think it may be a result of, I think if you go way back, Mike, when the COVID investigation began, and I think I made quite a strong point way back then. I said, look, I'm all for finding out how the virus started, and also, but the main reason is so that we can prevent another virus of its kind spreading throughout the world. But should we, a small country who relies heavily on the Asia Pacific as trade partners, lead the charge? I didn't think so. And, like I always say, don't bite the hand that feeds you.
It's. I was watching television this morning, and they were saying that about 36% of the market in China of all the wines is Australian, and that we're the second most expensive out of all the wines that's imported or exported to China. So the anti-dumping thing sort of maybe not. It's just that it is such great wine, and if it's great wine, they're going to buy it, and that's the idea of it.
Correct. Look, I think to sum it all up about the dumping of wine, what they're particularly worried about, and don't forget, China now, within the next 5 years, will be the biggest wine producer in the world. It'll overpass France, Italy and Spain. They'll have more grapes and wine for production coming out there. They're nearly there now. I think they're number 2 in the world. And one way is to encourage their own countrymen to enjoy their own product. But two, also, it is looking at, for argument's sake, if you could put it into a nutshell, if you're purchasing $35 for a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon in Australia and they export it to China, they may export it for around $10. There's two reasons behind this. They'll drop the price significantly to get in to the marketplace over there, but also there's also the other addition is that there's relaxation of tariffs and taxes as importation taxes. So because it was a free trade agreement between China and Australia, it became more apparent that it was a very important partner for us going forward.
Just briefly talk about the Chinese wine. I'm sorry, I'm a bit shocked with that. Always thought Chinese wine was cherry wine, which you never touched.
No.
But if they're such a great wine producer, Two things. One, it must make the rest of the world a bit nervy. But secondly, is it a copycat?
Look, there's no doubt about it, Mike. They've actually employed Australian winemakers and Australian viticulturists who have gone over there, lived there, particularly in the northern provinces, and they've started to develop quite significant land holdings of major varieties, i.e. Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, Shiraz, etc. And yes, they will be making similar wine styles to Australia and the New World wine styles, because these are the people who are teaching them how to grow grapes and make wine. It's quite a significant jump and boom for them. They've actually launched a wine not so long ago, about 3 years ago, which is the equivalent of our Grange Hermitage, and it comes from 5 provinces. And it's a Cabernet Sauvignon, and it was called Aoyum, and spelled Aoyum. And I've actually had the fortune of trying it, and it's an outstanding wine. Brilliant quality. It's exemplary of any quality wine across the planet.
So do you see, well, obviously wine prices it's controlled by demand in many cases. So the price of wine, especially when China really cranks up things, and with all the other wine markets being so strong, the price of wine globally could come down. I mean, I can buy a really nice bottle of wine. Let me tell you, I went to a local bottle shop, and they had this wine that was normally $18 a bottle, and they were selling it for $5.
Yeah, look, yes. 2 nights ago, I went to a local fine wine shop here, which is quite well known, and I purchased a bottle of Garnacha, which is Spanish word for Grenache, which is quite a synonymous variety in quality in regards to South Australian vineyards. And it was $10 a bottle, and I thought, I'll give it a go and bring it home and try it. It was under screw cap. I opened it up and I was shocked at the quality. It was just through the roof. I just went, my goodness. So not only have we got competition from the Americas, but we'll also have competition from the less economically challenged varieties of all countries, like in Europe, as in Portugal and Spain and Italy. They're producing outstanding wines at a very, very low price.
Is Australia then in a position then to match the wines from around the world? Because our cost of labour is much more than the US, much more than China, Chile, Argentina, all those. So we have a very high cost of labour and to do business. So can we compete on the world stage?
Look, I think the tipping point is bearing on fragility to the top end. If we continue to put our hands out instead of our hands up as a nation, it will inevitably hurt us globally and also domestically. And I'm seeing it as well. It's another argument, but we're pampered a bit, us Australians. I think we're the highest holiday makers in the world, of any nation in the world. And whereas if you have a look at nations like China and Japan, I think they get 1 week's holiday. And not us. We have a holiday for opening an envelope. It's what's happening around the country.
Look, I'm just looking for that envelope at the moment. I can't seem to find one. I'll have a holiday later. Actually, my holidays are a bit like yours. They would love to do one, but at the moment it's you can't. It's just head down and backside up, isn't it?
It's very hard work. We're at the present stage. I've just noticed the exudates, which are the little white roots, hairs on the end of the white roots in the grapevine, starting to move. So the soils are warming up, and we actually had bud burst the day before yesterday. The very first bud burst out. So it's all guns a-blazing now at Mount Cotton Vineyard here. So, not only preparing wines from last year and getting them into bottle, but now we're looking forward and looking ahead to the 2021 vintage.
With the bud burst, is that a bit like going to a hospital and your wife having quads?
It's fantastic, mate. I look forward to it.
Do you have a drink? Do you have a celebration drink?
Yes, I did last night. Yes, I did. And I had a reflection, and I always reflect the very first time that I ever noticed bud burst and was explained to me fully about, the nature and the symbiosis between nature and soil and how it interacts and how it happens. And it's a fascinating process, and I never, ever, ever take it lightly. It's the extraordinary world of nature.
Now, because we're broadcasting globally, thanks to modern science and at this stage YouTube, some wines to look forward to from your part of the woods.
Look, Queensland wines in particular have taken a giant step forward. I think the beauty about being a Queensland wine producer is that we're not restricted like some of our southern counterparts where you must grow Cabernet Sauvignon and you must grow Shiraz or you must grow Chardonnay or you must grow Semillon because it's been traditional for the last 50 to 100 years. We've moved into the emerging varieties categories, and an emerging variety is where the variety is less than 1% of the national total. And in particular, we've taken a strong interest and viewpoint around the Portuguese, Spanish and Italian varieties. And some of the ones to look out for going forward, Montepulciano, it's an Italian variety, it's a red wine. It's lovely, soft, round, robust, delicious with a lot of Mediterranean foods. Fiano and Vermentino are a couple more of the Italian white wines, which come up around near Campania and Abruzzi. And in the other categories, particularly the Portuguese and the Spanish varieties, Tempranillo, etc. Sorry about that, Mike.
Technology overtime here.
Yes. And particularly, I think, going forward with the climate change atlas that was released just last month, there's quite a severity of increase in temperature, and most regions are going to be looking at 4 to 5 degrees by the end of 2080. So therefore, concentration on the varieties that are now handling extreme weather conditions from Portugal, where they're currently reaching 50 degrees in centigrade now quite frequently throughout the growing period. They're the varieties I believe we must shift to and change to. So the consumer, within maybe 20 to 25 years, they will not be drinking champagne as we know it because those varieties won't be able to be grown in those regions to make that quality wine. They'll be still drinking sparkling wine, but could be coming from a variety like Alvarinho or Fulgurcao, which are white varieties from Spain and Portugal. And so our taste buds will have to be re-educated and trained, but that's good.
Sounds delicious. I'm almost smacking my lips, but it's a bit early, so I'll have to wait till a bit later to have some brie cheese and a nice glass of wine. Look, just back to the China thing, the anti-dumping case. Can you just tell me if the exports are the exports held up at docks while this investigation occurs, or will they still allow wines through?
Look, some are getting allowed through. It all depends on what dock and in what port it's at. I have heard that there are some just sitting there, which is quite dangerous, particularly in temperatures. If wine's sitting in a hot box on the dock, just sitting there, bobbing away. But I do know that one rather very large Australian wine company is quite nervous about this because 40% of their activity goes to China.
Oh my goodness!
And if that's the case, the thing that I'm fearing is that if this particular company can't send that wine to China, well, then they're going to dump that other 40% onto the domestic market. And in effect, that will hurt all the other markets down here.
It's a really hard business to be in on the land. I mean, you've got to worry about the Mother Nature, and then you've got to worry about governments, whether they make good decisions or bad decisions. The easy bit is probably just selling it to the consumer. Make a good product, they'll buy it. It's the other bits in between that make it hard. I mean, so I have to ask you this question. Why would you ever want to get into an industry that is being smashed around the head so many times?
If you've got the blood running through your veins of pure grape juice, it's hard to cut the wrist and let it out, mate. You can't do it. I'm just so lucky as a human being. I'm doing what I love and I love what I do, and it's exactly what I wanted to do when I was 15 years of age. And, every day I learn more and I read more, and every day I just feel like it's such a privilege to be in this industry. And it's because it's the science, it's the tradition, it's the history. It's every vintage is different. There's no two vintages the same. There's no two wines the same. And it's an extraordinary market out there. But it's quite challenging. We've just come out of droughts. We've come out of bushfires, and then throw COVID in on top of that. It's had a huge detrimental effect to our trade. We're seeing the trade here in Brisbane. It's slowly coming back, and it's quite good. Don't get me wrong, it's quite good, but it's not like it was pre-COVID. And I do fear that there will be a lot of wineries suffering what I call the post-COVID effect, which they may lose 50 or 60% of their business. Now, if that's the case, well, they're going to have to remove 50 or 60% of their workforce. So that has an effect right through the entire economy. How do we find more work for these people? It's been very challenging times, but like what I say, you get up in the morning, you blink the eyes, you jump out of bed and you go, here we go for another day. We're at it again.
Mike Hayes, President of the Queensland Wine Industry Association, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, Nadine, welcome today. We're going to have a really special tasting of our new release. It's a darker rosé, but I call it a rosé with attitude. And
it's very raspberry, isn't it?
It is very raspberry.
Very raspberry, but it doesn't have a label, Mike.
No. So this is for the members, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to have a competition to all our club members to see if they can invent a label for our Chambourcin Muscat Rosé.
That's a great idea.
But have a look at this, it's just beautiful. It's like light raspberry in colour. But I think what I like about this is the nose, cherry cola.
Isn't it? Definitely.
Lovely
I was
cherry.
just about to say cherry coke, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Cherry coke, cherry cola. It's just lovely and fresh. And you can see in the background there, behind it.
But it's not overly sweet.
No, and it's not sweet.
It's nice and dry.
It's nice and dry. It would taste sweet.
It looks sweet.
It looks sweet and then it doesn't taste sweet.
No.
So. So light chill on this. You know, you want to bring this down to about 8 to 9 degrees. Beautiful wine just to sit out there with other members of Ciramo, other club members and enjoy. But as you can see, it's not bone dry and it's very fresh fruit and lots of red berries in the mid palate. And that's what we're trying to get, something that's easy drinking. And this is the fruits of the hard labour of all the club members.
Yeah, all the club members picked the fruits that went into this from here up Mount Cotton.
So, big competition for all our club members. Send in your designs and we'll choose the best design.
Yes.
And they'll get a case of wine.
Oh, great idea.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Good on you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Coming up next, gin, rum, and Harriet Messenger.
As the world faces the challenges of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Lions recognize that kindness matters now more than ever. And Lions and Leos are finding ways to continue to serve our communities, including ordering food delivery for healthcare workers, holding story time for children online, and providing surgical masks to medical professionals and first responders. Empowering us to do more, Lions Clubs International Foundation has provided nearly $2.5 million in grant funding for COVID-19 relief. And that support continues to grow. For more than 100 years, in times of need, Lions always find a way to help those around them. And after we emerge from this, we will be stronger than ever. Visit lionsclubs.org to learn more.
Harriet Messenger is the General Manager of Marketing and Hospitality at Husk Distillers. Harriet has been responsible for building the Inkgin and Husk Distillers brands from the ground up, a very hard job, and has been long known as the Inkgin Girl. Harriet, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about the Australian agricultural rum that you produce and what's so unique about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is quite unique. I would definitely use that word to describe it. Agricultural rum is a quite unusual style of rum and not one that's widely made in the world. Basically, it's rum made from fresh crushed sugarcane instead of molasses. So it's made from sugarcane juice. instead of molasses, and never been made in Australia before. Traditionally and historically, it's been made in the French Caribbean and in some other islands around that sort of part of the world, that beautiful part of the world. But we in Australia have traditionally made the English style molasses rum, so it's something quite unique. And the wonderful thing about it is you're working with a live product. So molasses is pretty much the same the world over, but sugarcane juice is reflective of the region, the climate of that season. You can use different strains and different cane varieties, and that's all reflected in the juice and then in the rum. So it's something quite different, quite unique, a lot more volatile to work with. So it's a lot harder to make a rum with sugarcane juice than it is to make it with molasses. But the end product ends up being something totally different, and something that actually reflects the terroir and the provenance of the region that you're making the rum in, which is really exciting to us living in this beautiful part of the world.
Mm-hmm. What about the taste of it?
Yeah, the taste is also quite different. So we first tasted it when we were traveling through those French Caribbean islands, and it's a different style of rum and it's a different style of drinking rum. So I would liken it more to how we in Australia appreciate whiskey is how the French appreciate rum. So you drink it neat or on the rocks if it's a fine quality sipping rum. And in taste, it's different to molasses rum. It's more herbaceous. I would say it's more grassy and earthy. Herbaceous is a big one that I would use. Less. A lot of molasses rums also have added sugar, and we don't add any sugar to our rum as well. So it's a lot more dry. And yeah, I think those are the key differences.
I love that word herbaceous. It's far too big for me at this time of the day. But anyway, tell us about your other unique products, spiced Bam Bam, Inkgin, and other gins that you produce. Love the spiced Bam Bam. Who thought of that name, by the way?
Yeah, that was quite a contentious name, actually. Dad thought of it. He's the creative mastermind of this whole operation, and everyone we asked, it was 50-50. People either hated it or loved it. But in the end, we went with our gut, and we really liked the name. It has a few different ideas. There's actually a Caribbean singer called, what's her name? Nancy somebody. And she sings a song basically called Bam Bam. And we were listening to that song a lot when we were making Spiced Bam Bam. So spiced, rum, Bam Bam, it just kind of fit together. But I'll actually talk about pure cane first. So pure cane is our unaged agricole. And the reason I'll talk about this first is because this is how our rums start. So, and this is probably, if you're trying to find out the difference between molasses rum and agricultural rum, I would start with an unaged spirit. Have a daiquiri with this and have a daiquiri with a molasses white rum, and you'll really clearly see the difference. That you'll taste the difference, you'll smell the difference. It smells like crushed sugarcane in the bottle, tastes really dry, really grassy, really herbaceous, and it's full of flavor. Whereas molasses rum is more refined and designed to be mixed seamlessly into cocktails. This rum is designed to pack as much flavor into the bottle as possible. Spiced Bam Bam then is this unaged product which comes straight from the paddock to the distillery, processed and then bottled. This Spiced Bam Bam is pure cane which has been aged for between 3 and 5 years in oak barrels. And that's where all that colour comes from. So if you can see, beautiful.
Looks fantastic.
Yeah, and that is 100% natural. It all comes from the wood. That was something I didn't know when we first started doing this. I didn't realise that colour in spirits, every single spirit comes off the still clear. It's what you do after that gives it a colour. So the wood, and then after we age it, that really develops the rum and takes on a life of its own once it's in the barrel. We then empty the barrels and we infuse them with spices, whole native and traditional spices. And that's another quite different thing that we do with our rums that's quite unique, is that we actually use the whole botanical. So we don't use anything artificial. It's all natural. We don't use any essences. It's basically native ginger. We have beautiful gingers in Australia, so we use native ginger root. We've got some roasted wattle seed as well as hand-peeled oranges, and what else is there? There's vanilla and cinnamon quills as well, and we infuse all those botanicals into the rum for about 3 to 4 months. Then we take it out, filter it, and bottle it, and that is amazing on the rocks. All natural Australian native spiced rum.
What about foods? What foods go well with your drinks, and what is the best way to serve the rum? You mentioned on the rocks, but other ways, I mean, some additives maybe, such as a sort of a cocktail mix?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, pure cane, this one is, both of our rums are great just simply with ginger beer and lime, a light and stormy for the white rum, dark and stormy for the dark rum. In terms of cocktails, daiquiri would have to be for the white rum. Daiquiri is just one of the all-class cocktails. It's just lime, sugar, and rum, shaken and strained. It's just beautifully balanced if you can do it right. So simple. And in terms of food, I would definitely look at kind of Caribbean style recipes. So think like barbecued chicken, that sort of thing. Seafood is lovely as well with the white rum. The dark rum, think more darker roasty things. Gin is an easy one for food, so we do our Inkgin as well. The reason we do Inkgin is because we can only make this type of agricultural rum during the sugarcane harvest, which runs for about 7 months here in the Tweed Valley. The rest of the year we weren't doing anything, so we decided we needed to do something. We didn't want to just sit on our hands the whole time, so we started tinkering with a gin recipe. Gin doesn't need to be aged, and we can make it year round. So we developed Inkgin, which is a beautiful floral infusion, so you can see that colour there.
Magnificent, isn't it? And beautiful. Just it just looks gorgeous, and I can tell you what it tastes like. It's scrumptious.
You've done your homework.
Well I did. Some call it something else, but it was because I'm so professional. You see, we had to taste it.
I know you are. I've been saying that for years, and there should be more like you,
or less.
So the colour actually comes from a floral infusion. It's a butterfly pea flower infusion, and that's what we built that recipe around. It's got some native lemon myrtle leaves and other things, so it's quite a citrus-forward gin. And that one is amazing with any sort of seafood. So fresh prawns, oysters. We love doing a little gin and tonic jelly to go on the oysters with Inkgin, fish, anything like that. It's just fantastic.
Amazing. Now, can you describe the distillery, where it is, the facilities, and why you think it's so special?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're in the Tweed Valley, which is the most northern shire on the coast of the New South Wales North Coast. So we're just north of Byron Shire, and we're just south of the Gold Coast. So we're sandwiched in between two beautiful places, and in fact this is one of the most beautiful places in Australia. I think it's absolutely stunning. The geology is defined by the Tweed Shield volcano, which is 23 million years ago exploded and created some of the best surf breaks in the country, from Byron Bay all the way up to Burleigh Heads. It created beautiful valleys and wonderful mountain ranges. So we've got fantastic geology here. Where the distillery, which is behind me here, is on a 150-acre family farm, my family farm, and we're right on the Tweed River. We've got Wollumben, which is the eroded core of the ancient volcano, overlooks us, which is quite stunning. And we've got a cattle and cane farm here. So the cane, of course, to make our rums. The cattle actually eat all the distillery waste, so it's quite a closed circle production style. So they eat all of the gin botanicals, they eat all the stillage from our rum production, and they're very important members of the recycling team here. And then we've got our distillery as well. So we've got lots of beautiful plantings around the distillery full of native species that kind of inspire the different botanicals we use in the spirits. We've got 12 hectares of remnant Gondwana rainforest out the back, which is home to some nice koalas and kangaroos and things like that, and some wonderful biodiverse flora as well, which again inspires what we choose to put into our spirits. So it's a great place to make spirits, particularly spirits that reflect the provenance of the region.
Well, you're very spiritual.
Some have called this place behind me the Church of the Holy Spirit, which I can't argue with, because it does rather look a little bit cathedral-y.
It does. It's beautiful, and after a few drinks, it looks even much better, I would imagine. Hey, we have an audience that's global. If somebody, say, for example, in the US or in Asia or somewhere, wanted to sample some of this product, is that possible, and how would they do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually at the moment exporting to about 10 different countries with our Inkgin. Our husk rums are harder to get on because they're to make, so there's more limited quantities and more limited bottles available. But we export to the UK and a few other countries through Europe and the Asia Pacific. There's a great website called Master of Malt, which delivers to most countries, and they have a few of our products on there. So Master of Malt, they deliver internationally. They're a good one for all your spirit needs.
COVID, how did that affect your distillery?
Yeah, it has certainly. It's affected, I guess, everybody. Nobody's been exempt from from this. In the beginning, we were able to pivot. The biggest bummer was that the hospitality side of the business had to shut down, which was quite devastating for the staff involved. But we did manage to redeploy all of our full timers into production of sanitizer, which was great for a month or so. Now we're open back up. Things are kind of trucking along. It's just, I think the biggest thing is just trying to adjust to the constant updates, the constant changes, and the constant restrictions that are being lifted and reimposed and lifted and reimposed. But overall, we're doing pretty well. We're lucky that we've got plenty of space, so it's easy to socially distance from people out here in the Tweed Valley.
But you because of the borders being closed and open and closed and open, and you mentioned the other restrictions, it's hard also to plan, isn't it?
It is, yes, it is. We're planning sort of contingencies and planning plans. So every plan has to have a few different contingencies. And it's a constantly evolving thing.
Harriet, lovely chatting, and all the best. And hopefully this terrible COVID thing will just disappear, and we can all waddle across the border and sip on a lovely gin.
Yeah, thank you so much, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
We just love Japan and its traditional, but to us, quirky food scene.
もつ4種類ぐらい実は入ってるんですよ。4種類のそれぞれ違う油がこう出てきまして、その油がそれぞれ混ざってこう美味しくなるんですね。あとは明太子、実はこれうちがオリジナルで作ってる明太子で、鍋に合うように一から作ってるんですよ。明太子の美味しさと、あと鍋に合うというところと、もつの油と、あとは野菜から出る旨味、この三位一体で美味しくなるんですよね。 だからスープ自体にはそんなに味はつけてないです。薄い昆布だしを使ってます。なぜならばその明太子で味をつけるために他に味をいっぱいつけちゃうと美味しくならないんです。合わないんですよ。なんで明太子を生かした鍋、これが一番その特徴ですよね。
食べてみたら、でも本物のたらこプラス、調味料が入っていて、すごく美味しくできる。頑張ったな。まあこういうこと言ってますけど。うまい。
That's it for another week. Have a great weekend. For Bnap Today, I'm Mike Ryan.